Yeah.
Oh,
Okay. So, Pedra Ane, how long have I'm sorry.
that's
Now
okay.
you run a counseling center also. Is that correct?
I do. I absolutely do.
How
Exhale
long?
counseling.
Okay. And how long have you been doing that?
I originally started private practice in 2008
Okay.
and did it for many years and had a very serious injury and couldn't work for 2 years. And then I restarted it.
Okay.
So it has been exhale counseling since 2018.
Okay. And do you enjoy doing that? What do you enjoy
I
doing?
love it.
Yeah. Do you have other staff members or is it yourself or?
I have an office manager and I have 4 LPC associates.
Okay, great. That's a lot.
That's kind of my sweet spot because with group supervision, I really love having that opportunity to see what happens in different venues or milieus and kind of see the different applications of professional counseling.
Okay, great.
In fact, I had a counseling group or a supervision group one time, and 2 of the supervisees were there, and one said, not to break any confidentiality, but I know where you work and I'm a school counselor and I think we just sent a kid there. So I kind of want to know what y'all do to them. So when they come back, I know how to respond to that.
Okay. Yeah. That's good. So your supervisor said that. Your supervisee said that.
Yes.
Okay, great. So now how long have you been doing EMDR?
For about 6 years.
Okay. Where is your counseling center located at?
Right now it's all virtual.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the location when it isn't virtual is like, are you located in California?
League City, Texas.
Oh, exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's fun. Have you been in Texas like your whole life? Or?
I have been in Texas the vast majority of my life. I've also spent some time in Oklahoma, and actually recently I moved back to Oklahoma to be close to family, but I maintain my practice in Texas.
Okay, awesome. Oh, that's fun. And so you can do that because you're virtual.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And
I'm dual licensed in Texas and in Oklahoma. So
that's excellent.
That's an extra kind of layer of checking my boxes off.
Yeah. I actually know some California therapists who are getting dual licensed other places because they're going to launch actually. So anyway.
Yeah.
So you've been doing EMDR 6 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're certified in EMDR? Or?
I'm not certified at this point. I'm trained, but I'm not certified yet.
Right. Okay. What clients do you mainly work with EMDR?
I see a lot of combat veterans. And it's interesting because when I first started seeing that population, what happened was they started telling their friends, look, you need to go to your caseworker at the VA. You need to tell them this is what you need.
Right.
And that kind of mushroomed in a lot of ways. I wasn't real sure when I first started doing it with veterans because that's not how we're trained in EMDR. We're trained in trauma, but not necessarily that level of trauma in terms of being deployed for 18 months and being shot at every day.
Right. And perhaps shooting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. But I was really astounded at the level of hypervigilance and irritability and how quickly it went down.
Oh, with the EMDR.
With the EMDR.
Yeah. Yeah. So, does it almost feel magical? I
It
mean,
does.
yeah.
New clients ask me how it works, and what I want to say is it's magic. And for me, it's kind of a different situation, I think, than a lot of practitioners, because I've been on both sides of it.
Right. Right. Okay. So
The
you've
recipient of
experienced EMDR. Was that significant for you, or we
Second.
froze?
There you are.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that was a significant experience for you.
Absolutely. I had been in a domestic violence situation, and there were some memories I just couldn't talk past.
Right.
And was having recurrent nightmares and flashbacks and hypervigilance and all those things that were really holding me back from being the person I wanted to be. And when my counselor first suggested EMDR, I thought, yeah, you just don't want to deal with me anymore.
Right.
And 3 sessions, and I really haven't had the nightmares or the flashbacks. It all kind of went away.
Yeah. And do you find that, how long ago was that, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, that was probably 10 years ago.
Okay. Okay. And so do you find with your veterans, when you're working with your veterans, do you find that they report back the same type of experience?
Very much so. When we have concluded a session and they're leaving, one of the things in kind of my closing statements that I say is that if any other memories come up, just give me a call and we'll talk about them next session. We'll work on them then. And if anything with this particular memory comes up and starts kind of erupting again, let me know. And more often than not, I have the comments of, oh, I really hadn't even thought about it this week.
When they come back.
Right. And then the other thing that happens is, and this happens probably 50% of the time, is when I'm working with somebody who has numerous traumatic experiences and they want to work on all of them, and I'm down with that. About 50% of the time they come back and go, you know what, I hadn't even really thought about those other ones either. So
it's kind of like I tell my clients sometimes it's like Jenga. Like sometimes you remove this memory and we process this memory, and the rest of the memories kind of tumble down.
Right. I tell them it's a domino effect. You hit that one and the rest just kind of fall down. And every once in a while you have one that still stands up, and you got to go kind of poke that one in the right direction and let that one go.
So what's one of your favorite experiences with using EMDR?
I think the one that stands out the most to me is a gentleman that was referred to me by the VA. He was 86 at the time.
Wow.
And he had nightmares and the gamut of those negative experiences since Korea. He corrected me. He was not on an aircraft carrier. He was on a large ship that had airplanes on it. So I don't know what that is. He said it was not an aircraft carrier.
Don't ask, don't tell.
I'm sure somebody can correct me out there what that boat was. But he had some really horrific experiences there. And actually he's a retired dentist. And so he wanted to know a lot about the process of how EMDR works. And what I explained to him was the right hemisphere and left hemisphere each store different information. And the sorting process gets interrupted during trauma. So the traumatic memories get in the wrong file folder. This process crosses midline, gets both sides of the brain involved, and gets it in the correct file folder.
I like that. I have not heard that analogy before. I like that one.
Most of my clients can get that. When you start talking about other neurological pieces, it's
Right.
more
Little bit.
confusing. So we talked about it. We did 3 EMDR sessions.
Mhm.
He came back the following session. He said, Doc, I think I'm good. And I said, do you now? Tell me what that means. And he said, well, no nightmares, no jumping out of my skin.
Wow. Mhm.
We hadn't had a fight in my house in 2 weeks and I quit drinking.
Right.
And I
Yes.
said, back this horse up.
Right.
I didn't know you had been drinking a lot. And he said, I didn't either until I quit.
Uh-huh.
And he said, I didn't notice. And he said, I just been walking around that house going, he said, I looked at my wife and I was like, why are there so many liquor bottles around here? And she was like, well, honey, you've been drinking them.
That'd be you. Yeah.
And
Wow.
so he said, since then I have a glass of wine before dinner and a glass of wine with dinner, and that's it.
So
And
86 years old,
right.
and he had those nightmares and that hypervigilance for Korea was in the 50s, right?
Right.
Right. So wow, that's amazing. It so it changed his relationship with his wife, no doubt.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he said that, retirement was just kind of not doing stuff so much, but now he was able to make plans and really look forward to things. And because the irritability and that anxiety was lowered so much.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you primarily just use EMDR with the veterans, or do you use EMDR with anyone else?
No.
Any other population?
Right. I've also found it to be very, very helpful with survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Especially with repeated situations where it's a family dynamic,
Right.
and being able to, a lot of times what they process is that they're not bad or dirty, that they really had no control because they were small children.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So their negative belief about themselves based on that trauma is I am bad or I did something wrong. And through
Right.
EMDR, so if you could explain to the students, do you sometimes use interweaves in your process of doing EMDR?
I do if the client can't get there.
Okay.
If the client can get there on their own, I'm a firm believer that their process is more authentic and more correct than mine. If they can't get there, then I will offer some things. And I'm very clear with my clients all the time. If I'm wrong, call me out.
Right, right.
These are just suggestions. That's all they are.
Right.
And my clients are really good about calling me out if I'm wrong.
Well, that's good. That's good.
It is good.
Even your sexual assault clients are good about that. I'm assuming.
Yes.
Are the majority of sexual assault clients, have you seen men who've been sexually assaulted also?
I have seen one.
Right.
That EMDR was used. Predominantly it's women. And the ones that I've seen, interestingly enough, their abuser has been a parent who effectively trafficked them for drugs.
Oh, goodness. Wow.
And so then it becomes the layers of not only is it repeated, but it's a caregiver. Mm-hmm. And I'd rather have drugs than you.
Right. The layers of betrayal.
Right.
Yes. Uh-huh.
And so sometimes those layers are so thick that it becomes, well, you have children now. So when you think about the drugs, I'd rather have the drugs than you be safe. What does that feel like for you? And then be able to do sometimes we have to just kind of leave the session and then come back to a regular session and do some talking and then go back in.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. That makes sense. And then sometimes with those victims of or survivors of sexual assault, sometimes the law enforcement agencies or the system will become part of that. Do you help them reprocess that also?
Right. And it kind of goes into the same vein of it doesn't speak to who you are or any level of guilt for you.
Right.
It's that was their behavior. It doesn't speak to you. It's not if you were
It's
honest
not about
enough,
you.
if you were good enough, if you were whatever, they would have protected you.
Right.
It's about they didn't do their job.
Right. Yeah.
And you deserved to be protected no matter what.
Mhm. So with my students, that's what we've talked about. We've talked about the second rape of sometimes the judicial system actually is more trauma on that. With the military, do you ever work with law enforcement also or firefighters?
I have worked with law enforcement a couple of times. I had one officer in particular that was in pursuit and ended up rolling down an embankment into a creek. And when he rolled over upside down, the way that the water was, he believed he was drowning.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
Oh,
he,
so afterwards, I could imagine that he would have panic and anxiety just having been trapped and then getting out of the car and surviving that. That's going to give you anxiety and
right. And he was very confused. He came to me through EAP and he was very confused when he first got there. He said, I knew I needed to talk to somebody, but I don't know what about, because I'm fine. But I needed something out of my Tahoe, which is the vehicle he had been in.
Oh,
and he said, but they said, well, it's right over there in the impound. Just go get it.
right.
And he said, I could not walk over there. I couldn't.
Wow. Okay. So then you did EMDR with him before he walked over to the Tahoe, or how did that go? Or did he have somebody else go get the
No,
stuff?
we did EMDR sessions about walking back over there and what it would mean if he sees the damage inside the car.
Right.
And what that would be like for him. And he was able to focus on the fact that he wasn't drowning. The vehicle was upside down. It was about 8 inches of water. And he was also able to focus on the fact that fellow law enforcement got there really quickly and got him out.
Okay, good.
So he was able to kind of put in place that my brother's got me.
Oh, wow, that's great. That
it was.
It's interesting in my experience with working with law enforcement officers. A lot of times they'll have betrayal from the agency also. Just like with the military, I'm sure that there's betrayal from. Actually, I've worked with some in that capacity. So, what would you tell and what would you recommend? I love it that you've experienced EMDR and then you saw the change in yourself. I imagine your confidence went up. And
absolutely, it was a game changer for me.
Right. Did it change also your relationships?
It did in a lot of ways. Again, I realized.
I love your shirt, develop your boundaries. So I would imagine.
Develop your boundaries, respect your boundaries, and protect your boundaries.
All right. All right.
I'm a big boundaries girl.
Very good. You sell those t-shirts?
No, I bought it.
Okay. I like that.
The company is, I think it's
and we match.
TYNPH.
Are you in, is that purple? Because I'm in
yes.
purple. We match.
Yay! One of the things that EMDR has helped me to realize, and honestly, I've used it on a couple of different occasions with things that came up and were just really overwhelming. And one of the things that it has helped me realize is that there are things in this world I'm responsible for, and I take accountability for those things. And there's other things that were done that were beyond my control.
Right.
And those things, I don't have to carry the guilt for those.
So you got more clear about what was your responsibility and what wasn't your responsibility, regardless of what someone may have told you.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That's going to help you state your boundaries.
Respect and protect my boundaries. That's right.
Protect your boundaries. Yeah,
absolutely. And it helps me just, oh my goodness, it helps me in my professional life, being able to respect and hold those boundaries.
Oh, good.
And I'm no longer, I think, especially since that first session 10 years ago, I'm not as concerned about those moments where I feel like somebody else doesn't like me, doesn't trust me, doesn't think I'm the best, whatever. Because not everybody is the best fit for everybody else.
Oh, yay. So
I figured that's why there's so many of us in this world.
What I keep telling my class is, you're not for everyone.
Nope.
And I want them to get that as grad school students. You're not for everyone, so that they don't have to feel guilty that I don't want to sit with this person, for whatever reason.
Well, and let me add this too. Not everyone is my client.
Right. Explain that more.
There are clients that I have worked with that I've needed to pass along, and I've needed to say, here's 3 referrals. Here you go.
Absolutely.
And there's other clients that I look at, they do their little brief thing saying, look, these are why I want to come talk to you. And sometimes those are issues that I just don't feel like I'm going to be the best fit for that situation.
Okay. And you know yourself well enough that you can say, I'm not the best fit for this, and not feel guilty, and refer them to someone who would be a really good fit for them.
Right. And this is just personal, ethical, moral.
Right.
I try really hard to never leave anybody just out there. I always, even if they're not clients yet, I try to have referrals for them. That's
good. So that takes networking and knowing the therapist around you and being able to refer them. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do you help integrate? This is really wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. This is awesome. I love this. I love talking about counseling.
So do you also help, like if a veteran comes in and they were having all of these symptoms and then the symptoms just go away? I've had that happen a number of times, where the excessive alcohol just goes away, or the irritability just goes away. Do you then help them to know how to have relationship without the trauma? Or do you primarily say, I've done the EMDR work, let's send you to this person to go figure out the relationship?
No. Okay. I taught school for 20 years before I was a counselor, and I was very protective of my kids in my class.
Yeah.
That still carries on.
With your clients.
They're my people. They're mine. And so when we start, my plan is we will carry all the way through this journey.
Oh, that's great.
So
you you walk them through the integration process of how to live life without the trauma constantly dogging them.
Yeah, and one of the things that I've also talked to people about, even before we've done EMDR, just when we're initially talking, is who are you? I want you to describe yourself to me. Like we've never met, I want you to describe yourself. You are not allowed to use a diagnosis, symptoms, medications, or
kind of labels.
what is the word, the pop culture words like triggered or coping skills. You're not allowed to use any of those. Now, tell me who you are. And it's fascinating to me how many people absolutely got nothing.
Okay, so so you do that before you start the EMDR process?
Sometimes if they're very hooked into, I have trauma, that's why I do all these things.
Right.
Okay, so tell me who else you are besides the trauma.
Oh, that's excellent. I could see that really working with anxiety, because so many times women and men, I'm an anxious person, and that becomes part of their identity. And
absolutely
disengaging them from that identity is so vital.
You know, another piece that it's worked really well with is parents. Oh, my kid's got ADHD. What do you want me to do? Well, tell me about your kid without that.
Okay. So you know what you're describing is you're describing post-traumatic stress growth rather than post-traumatic stress disorder or injury. And you're describing how you help your clients move into post-traumatic stress growth. And
I like that word.
Yeah, and then Captain Charlie Plum taught me that word because he was a prisoner with the Hanoi Hilton, and when they studied those prisoners, they started becoming aware of post-traumatic stress growth. So it's beautiful how you are teaching your clients that they have a north. You know, you're saying that their north isn't anxiety, or their north isn't trauma. Their north is whatever they've described about themselves. That's really
my goal for each of my clients is to live the life they want to live.
Right.
You know, I've had people come in who are whether they spend too much time on social media and they've picked up all the lingo about diagnoses, etc. And I think I've got this, and I read 14 books on this, and then I thought I had this, and okay, so you say you have anxiety. Okay. Right. Does it get in your way, or is it something that just shows up when you got to go to the doctor or when you've got a midterm? Does it get in the way of you living the life that you want to live?
Okay.
If not, then yeah, we can talk about that, and we can do a couple of things to kind of tweak that and make it more manageable. But let's focus on where you want to get.
Excellent. Excellent. So let's not focus on something that is just a part of your life periodically. Let's focus on where you want to get. Like that, I would call that their north. But I love that. I love that. So what would you tell a new therapist, someone that was beginning their career and they want to take either, I mean, we're not talking about brain spotting, but they want to take EMDR and they think that they want to integrate that into their practice. What are some things that you would tell them?
I think it's an amazing tool. It's breathtaking to me.
Yeah.
Now, with that, having said, not everybody is your client and you're not everybody's therapist, one of the things that I've found is as soon as I get trained in something, that all those people come to my door.
Okay.
So how much do you want to work with trauma?
That's excellent.
Because if trauma is something that you're going to struggle with for whatever reason, because
Right.
you have your own really difficult history of trauma,
Mhm.
whether you've talked through it, no matter what you've done with it, if you have that history of trauma, there's times it's going to bubble up a little bit,
Right.
you know,
Right.
and you have to be aware of that. If trauma is not something that you feel like you really want to spend years doing,
Right.
then really think about if that's where you want to put your focus.
That's excellent. That's excellent advice. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, people,
Because
I've worked with a lot of people with addictions, and I've had people say, well, why don't you get your LCDC? And it's like, because I don't want that to be the only group of people I see.
right. Right. Because
I'm already seeing 15% of my clientele just per population have, whether they realize it or not, they have some connection with drug and alcohol dependence and addiction.
right. So you're
I'm
so
seeing
you've decided that you want to be competent with working with people like that, or people who struggle with addictions, but that doesn't want you don't want that to be your expertise.
Absolutely.
And so with EMDR, you're saying, unless you want to have trauma be your expertise, maybe think about how much you want to invest in this EMDR process.
Absolutely. Because I know when we're new, oh my gosh, we want to do EMDR. We want to know how to do hypnosis. We want to do play therapy.
Right.
We want to do, you name it. We want to
Imago,
be the expert on everything.
Yeah.
Yes, we are the one-stop shop. Everybody come here.
Right. I
It's
just love it
more,
that you're saying you're not for everyone.
well, and you know, there's another saying that I just love. If you like everybody at church, you don't go to church nearly enough. There's people that the more you get, you're going to see little faults and flaws, and you're not going to necessarily fit with that person well. And I think the same thing fits with clients. If you say, yes, I see this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and I'm kind of wondering, unless you're seeing 70 people a week, how many of these issues are you dealing with?
Right.
But there's a ton of niches out there to choose from.
What is it that they say? A jack of all trades and a master of none.
Master of none.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying as soon as you can get into that, decide what your niche is. And if it's not trauma, don't spend a lot of time learning skills that are just for trauma. And
right.
I think that's excellent, because actually EMDR is a lot of money. It's a lot of time. And I think we have to be strong in our therapeutic foundation to effectively give EMDR to our clients, I think.
Right. And
So
I think another
piece
of that is, you know, when I was told, you know, find your lane, find your niche, find your thing.
Right.
I thought I was going to be there for the rest of my life. That was very intimidating to me. And just because you find this one interest level doesn't mean you stay there forever and ever.
Right. Oh, that's excellent. Yeah, because you might grow. You might decide, I've been a therapist like 28 years. So I started with children and adolescents, and in the last probably 15 years, now my practice is just primarily veterans and law enforcement and fire. So and no kiddos.
Yeah, I sold all my toys.
Oh, you did?
I did. It was, you know, and it was a combination of things. One of the things is I had a kid who was adamant that I get down on the floor and play with him every week. It's like, okay, fine. And I would get down on the floor and I'd play with him. And then when it was time to get up, he told me one time, he said, well, that didn't look pretty.
No. Yeah, if you're gonna
I
work
said,
with
I
kids,
know, I told you.
yeah, kids will be really honest with you. They will call you out. Yes.
I also have a co-therapist.
Okay,
This is Alice.
Alice.
She just
And-
jumps up in my lap from time to time. She's not really trained. She thinks she
Okay.
is.
Yeah, yeah. So that's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah. Mine is Bonnie, and she's getting trained to be a therapy dog. So, but she can't get her vest yet. She has to sit for 5 minutes, stay for 5 minutes. I don't know. There's all these little things.
Right. Oh, she'll sit
Yeah.
and then she gets right back up. She's like a toddler. I did it. Now what?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, Pedra, this is just awesome. I so appreciate you doing this. I'm gonna turn off the recording because this is what
Okay.
I needed. So.